My name is Zach Arnold. I'm a Hollywood film and television editor, a documentary director, father of two, an American Ninja Warrior in training, and the creator of Optimize Yourself. For over 10 years now, I have obsessively searched for every possible way to optimize my own creative and athletic performance, and now I'm here to shorten your learning curve. Whether you're a creative professional who edits, writes, or directs, you're an entrepreneur, or even if you're a weekend warrior, I strongly believe that you can be successful without sacrificing your health or your sanity in the process. You ready? Let's design the optimized version of you. Hello and welcome to the Optimize Yourself podcast. If you're a brand new optimizer, I welcome you and I sincerely hope that you enjoy today's conversation. If you are inspired to take action after listening today, why not tell a friend about this show and help spread the love? And if you're a longtime listener and Optimizer OG, welcome back. Whether you're brand new or you're a seasoned vet, if you have just 10 seconds today, it would mean the world to me if you clicked the subscribe button in your podcast app of choice. Because the more people that subscribe, the more that iTunes and the other platforms can recognize this show, and thus the more people that you and I can inspire to step outside their comfort zones to reach their greatest potential. And now on to today's show. How many times have you finished a job and you felt like you had nothing left in the tank? You gave it everything that you had 24/7, thinking to yourself, I'll just start taking care of myself when the next hiatus comes, only to be cursed by the fact that you're good at what you do and that hiatus never appears. You repeat the cycle for months, years, or even decades, wondering where all the time went. When you imagine a high-profile, award-winning editor like Michelle Tesoro, well, you would just imagine that burnout isn't a problem. That's just for people that are struggling to make it, right? Given her track record, having worked on shows such as House of Cards, Godless, On the Basis of Sex, When They See Us, and most recently The Queen's Gambit, Michelle clearly has it all figured out, right? As you'll hear today in part 2 of my conversation with Michelle, just like us, she too often finds her tank completely empty at the end of a project. And in part 2 of our conversation, we specifically examine the question of what is leaving her so drained. Michelle is incredibly open, honest, and brave to share her challenges maintaining such a demanding career while also balancing it with her friends and her family. And she even at one point allows me to put her on the hot seat to really dig into what is driving her to still work so hard even at this level of her career. And spoiler alert, even she fears missing out on the next gig. One key takeaway from this interview that I hope everyone understands is that greater success does not make your career or your lifestyle decisions any easier, and in fact, it becomes the opposite. It becomes harder to say no, and the fear of missing out never goes away. And by the way, P.S., if you did miss part 1, you don't need to listen to it first to understand this conversation. However, I do highly recommend that you listen to part 1 at some point if you're interested in hearing Michelle talk about her career path and what has driven her to this level of success. Now, if you're struggling with creative burnout right now, or you find yourself sacrificing time away from family when you know deep down that it doesn't have to be this way, then I invite you to download my ultimate guide to optimizing your creativity and avoiding burnout, which offers over 50 pages of my best tips, tricks, and strategies to consistently stay focused and energized throughout your long workdays when you're trapped in a dark room that most likely has no windows. You can download my ultimate guide 100% free at optimizeyourself.me/ultimate guide. All right, without further ado, part 2 of my conversation with ace editor Michelle Tesoro, made possible today by our amazing sponsors Evercast and ErgoDriven, who are going to be featured just a bit later in today's interview. To access the show notes for this and all previous episodes, as well as to subscribe so you don't miss the next inspirational interview, please visit optimizeyourself.me/podcast. I mean, I don't know what the ultimate top of the ladder is for you, but you're doing pretty well on it so far.
Yeah, it's funny you talk about that because there's varying degrees of what people define as their success, right? And I think that I don't know what my tippy top was. Maybe it was editing like amazing Academy Award winning movies or whatever. And maybe that still is. But but it sort of evened out, kind of dived down in the last couple of years, only because I realized sometimes you don't have control over certain events and certain projects that come to you. And also sometimes the sacrifices that people have made who are in those positions, you may not want to make that in your life. So, when you define success, it's like, well, is it a career that I guess for me, I was just thinking, I'm pretty happy with the content that I'm able to edit. And I like the people I work with. I've now realized that is really important. I don't want to work with assholes anymore. And I also want to have a happy home life. I want to have these other things and I want to be healthy. So what is that balance? And I think you have to say, well, since I don't have control over what that tippy top actually is, and maybe I just need to recognize this as being what I should be grateful for and feel like this is a tippy top. And then I don't have to worry about getting to the tippy top, because what is that going to get me anyway? I think this happened to me because, a friend of mine passed away in 2014, a really close friend. And it was in the middle of, I just was trying to remember all the times that I didn't spend with him. And I realized that, well, it was because I was working my ass off and I was really in the middle of it. And not that he would say, oh, you should have done this or that, but you do recognize that, not just your time on this earth is limited, but other people's and your time with them. So is it worth the tippy top if you never see these people who, if they go, you're going to regret that?
You would think that I had given you a word for word script of this podcast interview, because that is what I call the perfect segue. This is exactly where I wanted to go with the heart of this interview. And the reason that I consider this the perfect segue is that the real heart of this conversation is the life in addition to the job. There's no doubt in my mind, and you and I haven't talked about this at all yet, but given the body of work that you've worked on, and especially given you've done more than one series where it's very unusual, where you're the only editor, that you've probably had to put in some really, really long hours. And you've talked about some of the possible regrets that you've had of maybe working too much and realizing that maybe this is the top of the ladder for me. Maybe I don't want to get to the top, tippy top, and win the Oscar because of the sacrifices that are going to come along the way. And this is going to bring me to telling kind of an embarrassing story that you've never heard before. But I don't remember exactly when it was. I think you alluded to it was maybe in 2019. I was either in the middle of finishing up House of Cards, or I had just seen On the Basis of Sex. I'm not sure which one it was, but I was very well aware of you and had done some research on you. And then I happened to look at my email list one day, and I'm like, oh my God, Michelle Tesoro reads my newsletter. Like, it was just like I blushed and I was like, oh my God, I was so embarrassed. It was like I had been passed a note in study hall that you liked me. I was like, oh my God. So what I want to talk about is why. Why did you subscribe to my newsletter, and what brought you to me? Because there was a very specific episode and story that resonated with you.
There was a newsletter that came before that specific story, which we'll get to, about how you can, I think it was about focus. You had something about focus. I kind of just jived with some of the things that were on your blog, like deep work and kind of doing your work and trying to maximize your day and your time and like physically taking care of yourself. And then I think I just sort of started listening to the podcast, and I can't remember. I think the Roger Barton one. Yeah, that one was the first one that I listened to. I didn't know what it was going to be about really, but because I was in New York at the time, I was doing a lot of podcasting, and I had gotten an apartment in Chelsea. So I had about a 2.5 mile walk, which was about an hour. Perfect for podcasts. And I was listening to it, and he was, talking about his life and talking about all the hours and the hours away from his family and all this stuff. And of course, he talked about how he was able to use this other, well, it was the thing about Evercast, right? So he talked about Evercast, and I was like, oh, let's see what this is. because, here I am in New York because we're doing post in New York because Scott lives in New York, but production is actually in Berlin. And they've been in Berlin for weeks now. And geez, I left home and I'm in New York, and why am I here? I'm making great money, obviously, it's a distant hire. It's like I was just banking all that money we're trying to save. And in my mind, I actually knew, because I had done this with him before, that I knew that my tank was going to be empty, and I wanted to take the fourth quarter off. So I was banking everything that I could so I could force myself not to take a project. And then I saw this and I was like, oh, I don't know, maybe he'd be interested in working this way. And maybe I could buy some time where I could stay home and work and not have to move, for so long. Because, on Godless, I did 13 months in New York, and Queen's Gambit, it was a little less than a year. And we did it. And of course, Scott actually fell in love with this idea of doing it because, of course, he had his own thing. Oh, do you think I could do this from Connecticut? Can I do this from Martha's Vineyard? And like, I and don't get me wrong, we love each other's company for sure. But all of a sudden, our world opened up to, we can kind of feed our, introverted selves that doesn't really like going places but still do the thing that, we want to do. But yeah, I think I just got to that point where I'm like, I need balance because I was engaged. I was still trying to sort of learn how to balance having somebody else in my life. And I no longer could really make decisions without talking to somebody else because it affects him now. So, and actually, in fact, having this ability to just say, yeah, I'll go to New York for a year. I don't, nothing's going on for me here. I'll go there. I'll do Godless. I can't really do that anymore. Although, because Brandon also works on location, it's a little easier to do it because you do it too. So, we've made it work. But yeah, I mean, it started to sort of get to me a little bit. Although I really enjoy working with Scott, so it's not that hard of a sacrifice.
But at the same time, though, what everybody sees are the pictures of you in the articles and on Cinema Editor magazine, and Queen's Gambit is everywhere. Oh my God, I so want that. I so want that. But right. Nobody really hears about the year-long relocation, city that you don't really need to be in. And what I really want to hone in on is this idea that I know at the end of this, my tank is going to be empty. What right. gets you to that point where at the end of a project like that, there is nothing left in the gas tank?
I mean, how does it happen? Or is it more, what do you mean?
Well, what are the factors for you that you think lead to it? Because for some, they can't even get to the finish line. For others, they'll just push and push and push and push and push and get to the end. And it's super long hours, crazy long creative sessions. But then for others, it's a lot more of a paced out marathon than it is a constant sprint. And I think you had mentioned something, I don't remember which interview that it was, but it's similar to something that I've always said is a trap we fall into. It's this mindset of, oh, you know what? I'm going to get healthy again when the next hiatus comes.
Yes. Well, yeah. And unfortunately that happens. It's like, that's when people decide they're going to see their family and see their friends. And, you kind of go underwater for the period of time that you're on a show. I mean, even by the time I got on Queen's Gambit, I already felt like I was running on fumes, in fact, because I hadn't really taken a break prior to that. And what scared me about it was I knew what it was going to ask of me because I had done it before with him. But I think the thing is when I'm when I'm working with Scott, it's a little different because I have, especially when it's just me, I have a little bit more creative control. He allows me to manage my own time. I'm not managed. I hate being managed.
Here. By the way,
yes.
Like you want to irritate me, try and manage my time. No,
yeah,
thank you.
Don't tell me when to do this and when to. I know exactly what we all need to do, and he understands me in that. Well, he called me. I'm a born department head, is what he said about me. So there's that freedom that now there's not, even though it seems like it's more work, it's less stress because I'm allowed to be who I am in many different ways. So it feels less stressful. And plus I enjoy everything that he writes. I enjoy working with him in projects that we do together. So then that's another level where it's a little bit better. So I can do the long run, but I kind of just knew from being away from home was going to take a toll on me. Being away from Brandon was going to always takes a toll. Although we seem to manage, we do every month we try to see each other or travel to see each other, should say. But I also just think physically, like it's also, you hold all the stress in. So you're ultimately going to do that. Yeah. I think mentally I just knew I was going to, it was going to be hard for me because I had already not taken a lot of time off because before that I did Ballers. Prior to that, I did When They See Us. And then prior to that, I think I took like 2 months or 3 months, and then I was doing On the Basis of Sex. And for some reason, I felt like I hadn't taken the time. I don't know what it is. This is something I'm still trying to figure out, actually, because I always feel tired. And, my best friend Sarah said the same thing. We were talking about, I just caught up with her. She's not in the business at all. And I think I had mentioned to her months ago, I really want to take a break. And I was telling her about whatever next project I'm doing. And she goes, oh, so you're really not taking a break, are you? I'm like, she really knows. I mean, and I don't know what it is. I just think, it's the no thing.
It all comes back to that. No. That's right. So let me ask you this. What I'd love to do is dig a little bit deeper. Probably no surprise there. But what I'm really interested in is if there were one area, looking at the way that you manage your day, your week, your habits, if we could get you out of the mindset of, I'm going to take care of all that when the next hiatus comes. But as soon as the hiatus comes, I say yes to the next thing and I fill the space and there's no longer any hiatus. Right. I'm going to do something that's called putting somebody on the hot seat. You ever heard of that concept before?
Oh gosh, yes.
Yes. So I've been releasing some of these sessions. I call it Hot Seat Fridays, to give people a glimpse into the process of when a student comes and they say, I've got this thing that I can't figure out. And as soon as you said, I can't put my finger on what it is, I'm like, ooh, this could be a good opportunity to figure this out. Given how talented you are and how in demand you are, what are the odds that the time is going to come when you have a long gap of several months where you get to recover, focus on your health, and nobody's going to bring a project to you that's almost impossible to say no to? What are the odds of that?
They're very, very, they're either high or low. The odds of somebody bringing a project to me and I'm on, say, a sabbatical, they're always high because every time I try to take a break, it's hard to.
Yes. And so my point is the odds are extremely low that you're going to have a several month hiatus where you don't get an amazing offer that you have to say yes to.
Right.
Right.
Correct.
So that the chances of that are slim because you're really, really good at what you do. And you're now in high demand. And especially after the Queen's Gambit, I would imagine you get offers probably, if not on a daily, at least a weekly basis. Oh, we've got to have the Queen's Gambit editor. We're doing another show about chess. Got to have the Queen's Gambit editor. I would imagine that you have a lot of people reaching out to see if you're available. So if we're talking about chess rather than checkers, let's say that we want to play chess with the way that you manage your lifestyle as a very highly successful in-demand editor. We have to start with mindset. And if the mindset is, I'll figure this out and I'll start to see the family and the friends in the next hiatus that realistically is probably not going to come for you for a long time. If we look at the way that you're pacing out your time and your energy now, what are a couple of things off the top of your mind that kind of come to you like, oh, this is an area that I struggle with?
In terms of pacing out my time?
In terms of anything. If we're talking about any major repeated behavior or habit that's leading to this pattern of I finished the project and my tank is on empty and I need the recovery time that I never give myself. What components might lead to that? And you don't need to get super personal. But at the same time, I have a feeling you're not the only person that deals with these struggles, especially at the level that you're at right now.
Right. Well, I think it's the saying no. It's being afraid. It's like the FOMO thing, fear of missing out on something cool, fear of never getting that call again. I think we all feel that way because it's, I've seen it happen to people, and it makes me feel like I have to maybe think that the Queen's Gambit or such has never happened because the light goes out like that. So there is a little bit of fear about that. Yeah, it's sort of the taking care of myself, I guess.
All right, so now we're getting somewhere where because there's this FOMO, and I think it's really important for people to hear somebody at your level that still has the mindset, I might never get another phone call again. I am never going to work in this town and nobody wants to work with me. Because if somebody that's a lot lower on the ladder or a lot younger, they're going to think, well, that's absurd. I feel that way, but there's no way that somebody like Michelle could feel that way. And guess what? Sure. We all have that fear. This is going to be the last show and then that's it. They're all going to find out I'm a fraud and I have no idea what I'm actually doing. I just pretend to know how to do this stuff and they're going to figure me out. So if we know that you're going to have a lot of amazing opportunities that are going to come up, some of them might be once in a generation or once in a career chance, right? I think a lot of the shows you've done are really, really great shows, but the Queen's Gambit is something really special and unique, and there's not a lot of those. Had you said no to that for the sake of exercising or seeing more friends or family, I'm assuming you would agree, you would look back and see the finished product and say, how could I have said no to that? Like, I can't believe I did that and I missed this opportunity, because what a unique career opportunity. Agreed?
Sure. Hindsight's always 20/20.
Hindsight's always 20/20. So if we know that at least right now that the odds of having a long hiatus and overcoming the FOMO of missing a really great opportunity is slim, then you alluded to, well, maybe it's some of the lifestyle choices or lifestyle struggles of working on these big shows over a long period of time. So getting a little bit deeper into those, what are one or two of the lifestyle struggles off the top of your head that you think are leading to this empty tank by the end of the show?
I mean, I think that you kind of can't get around the amount of time you need, to get through the day-to-days of it, like the dailies, doing the cut, satisfying whatever puzzle solving problem you have in your head, and you got to work through it. And when you're done, you're done. And that's not done in an hour. That's done when you're done. So I think there's a mode when I'm doing this, if I'm not keeping up. It's a little bit easier when I'm doing dailies, which I think I was better at this last time around in terms of a healthy diet, sleep, doing the yoga routine. And then at some point, when things are a little bit more crazy, those things start to fall by the wayside, So if I don't have all the things, I used to call them my ists, the chiropractor, therapist, acupuncturist, massage therapist, that basically fix the broken body over the weekend in order to restore for the coming week. It gets hard. And I think I was trying to figure out a way, because I wasn't home getting those things that I know were at home, like how do I get them where I am? So you kind of have to take these I think it's always like a process for me to figure out how I'm going to restore during a project, constantly restoring. So that is something that I struggle with. I don't know what else.
Well, I think you've hit upon one that's important.
Yeah.
And I'm going to argue, maybe not the opposite point, but I'm going to maybe give you a slightly different perspective. Given the breadth of your 20 plus year career and knowing your work ethic, is there a world in which you believe realistically you can work harder than you already do?
I don't think I could do that.
I don't think that you could either. From what I'm hearing, I don't think you could work harder so you could just get more done and power through.
Right.
But what if instead of thinking, well, it just takes as much time as it takes to get the job done. That's really what kills me, is that I got to get through the dailies. I got to cut the scenes. I got to think of the ideas, and it just takes as long as it takes. Sure. That's the way that I used to work as well. Essentially, I was editing 24/7. I'm sure you've had the same scenario where you're in your sleep and you're editing in your sleep.
Absolutely.
You're putting the scenes together. You see the timeline. It's just you're playing Tetris all night long in your sleep. So your brain never shuts off. But what if you were to compress the time that you're allowed to be in that mindset where you're burning all of that creative energy? One of the biggest revelations that I had that really started this whole movement of me learning how to work smarter, not harder, is that our brain is roughly 3% of our body weight, but it consumes 20% of our calories. And I was like, that's why I feel like I get hit by a Mack truck at the end of the day. Because one of the things that everybody says is, I don't understand why I feel like this. I just sit all day long. It's not like I'm doing anything, but it's because our brains are constantly going. And the big change for me was when I realized that if I actually allow myself less time and I give myself limits, I get more done in that time. And the big thing for me was realizing that if I can become a master of this tool, just like I am with Avid, this would change the game. And that tool was my calendar. Once I learned how to better manage my calendar and compress the amount of time I allowed myself to be creative, there were less distractions, there were less random breaks, there was less procrastination. But I also found that I can pace myself more like a marathon runner. So give me a picture of a general day for you. Is it a 10-hour day, a 12-hour day, a 16-hour day? Is it in front of the computer the whole time? Are there breaks? Like, what's a day in the life of Michelle while she's editing one of these huge tentpole TV shows or movies?
I mean, I think it's usually a 10 to 12, depending upon how much came in. And generally, how I like to structure the day when I'm in dailies, let's just say, for example, is I like to do, and I guess this goes for when I'm out of dailies too. So I like to do the more complicated cutting in the morning when I'm fresh. And then I generally do my selects and watch dailies in the afternoon after lunch. So I know that my blood sugar is probably less and I'm probably a little tired after the morning. So, I generally get up, and if I'm in New York, I'm doing the walk. So to me, like that's, I get a little exercise. I get there and I get right into whatever the hardest thing or whatever I think is the hardest thing, and do it first thing. And then I get into the more kind of watching dailies a little later. And then maybe after that, I may get into trying to cut something for the first time or doing some easier things. Cause by the end of the day, I'm tired. Right. And then go home. So, and then I totally veg out in front of passive TV, like 90 Day Fiance or something. Okay, I don't think for HGTV.
You do something similar to me, which is I call them my palate cleansers. I need to watch something that's the polar opposite of what I'm working on. So if I'm working on a comedy action drama, I need to watch the polar opposite, and I'll change and choose whatever that show is to be as different. Pacing, music, character, performance, it's got to be completely different from whatever I'm working on at the time, just to cleanse the palate. But let's think about between all the time that you're working and the time that you're vegging out in front of the TV, how much are you passively or actively looking at a screen in your waking hours?
Oh gosh, almost all of them.
Pretty much every minute that you are awake and conscious, you're staring at a screen.
Yes.
During that time,
I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 of them in front of me now.
As any good editor would, right? I've got 4 here as well. I'm right there with you.
My sincerest apologies for the interruption in the middle of this interview, but if you are a content creator or you work in the entertainment industry, not only is the following promo not an interruption, but listening has the potential to change your life, because collaborating with Evercast is that powerful. Here's a brief excerpt from a recent interview that I did with Evercast co-founders Brad Thomas and award-winning editor Roger Barton.
Living this lifestyle of a feature film editor has really had an impact on me. So I was really looking for something to push back against all of these lifestyle infringements that are imposed on us, both by schedules and expectations. When you guys demoed Evercast for me that first time, my jaw hit the floor. I'm like, oh my God, this is what I have been waiting for a decade.
I also had the same reaction when I first saw Evercast. 2 words came to mind: game changer.
Our goal, honestly, is to become the Zoom for creatives, whatever it is you're streaming, whether it's editorial, visual effects, Pro Tools for music composition, live shot cameras. It's consistent audio and video, lip sync always stays in sync. think whether you're in a live session where you're getting that feedback immediately, or you can't get it immediately, so you record the session and you can share those clips with people on the production team where there's no room for any confusion. It's like, this is exactly what the director wants. This is exactly what the producer wants.
What matters most to me is it makes the entire process more efficient, which then translates to us as creatives who spend way too much time in front of computers. We get to shut it down and we get to go spend time with our friends and family.
The biggest complaint, and I'm sure you guys have heard this many, many times, this looks amazing, I just can't afford it.
Tesla had to release the Model S before they released the Model 3. So by the end of the year, we are going to be releasing a sub $200 version a month of Evercast for the freelancer and indie creatives. Anyone who is a professional video creator outside of Hollywood.
I think what we've learned over the last few months is that this technology can translate to better lives for all of us that give us more flexibility and control while still maintaining the creativity, the creative momentum, and the quality of work.
I cannot stress this enough. Evercast is changing the way that we collaborate. If you value your craft, your well-being, and spending quality time with the ones you love, Evercast now makes that possible for you and me. To listen to the full interview and learn about the amazing potential that Evercast has to change the way that you work and live, visit optimizeyourself.me/Evercast. Now back to today's interview. If we look at the pattern that you have throughout the day, from the moment that you finish your walk, you plopped yourself in front of the computer and you said, what's the hardest thing I have to work on? I'm going to do it while I'm fresh. From that moment until you leave the cutting room and then you go back to being in front of another screen, how much of that time is spent away from the computer?
Including breaks where I go and I chat up the assistant or my post supervisor or somebody. Well, I got the 2 hours of the walking, right, before getting there and coming back. Showering, that's important. I don't know, really, maybe about 3 to 4 hours.
So that's not too bad.
Not looking.
But if we're looking at the time you sit down to start doing the editing to the time you leave the edit suite, are you one that just gets into it for hours at a time and the world disappears and you don't talk to anybody and I forget that I have colleagues and I forget to eat lunch and I don't go to the bathroom and I don't drink water? Or are you getting up and moving around?
I'm getting up and moving around. We have a very leisurely lunch. You know, on the Queen's Gambit, what was fun about it is, I mean, the assistants were awesome. So like, you know, when they, and I had 2 of them. So when they did the dailies prep was already done. So basically we could have lunch and then after dailies, after lunch, we would watch the daily sequences together. So that it was social. So it wasn't me by myself. And I didn't have to sit in my chair because at the time I was in this big room and I bought a projector. So I would sit in one of the other chairs in the room. Like we had like armchairs, 2 armchairs and a couch were in there. So I would sit in one of the armchairs, so not at the desk. And I would just look at the projector while one of the assistants was marking selects on the Avid. So it gave me a different perspective. So that was a little bit more fun, you know, but yeah, I mean, you know, then I'm sure there was maybe twice during the day where I would go in and talk to Mick and chat him up and talk about dogs or whatever we were talking about at the time. And I did that a lot. I would get up, okay, I gotta chat somebody up, go somewhere. Yeah. So there is a lot of up and down. And I think, you know, I guess I didn't mention, like when I get up, before I would go to walk, I would do like yoga in the morning or something. I did have a good practice of 30 minutes of something before I would leave for work.
So you're doing 30 minutes of yoga, 2 hours of walking. You're getting up and moving around all day long. You're taking a leisurely lunch. So it seems to me that can't be what's leading to the empty tank at the end of the show, because those are all the things that I would prescribe and say, you're doing pretty well.
No,
so what else can we tap into? Because that sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah, I mean, I really tried to maximize. Well, I shouldn't say max. I really tried to pace out my time because, you know, I can't just sit there and do it. And I also know that when I'm not actually actively working, that's when I can solve some problems, like in the shower or, you know, when I wake up and I'm like, oh, there's that thing, I could do this or whatever. So, I don't want to be working all the time. But
and I love that you point that out, by the way, because so many people with our culture fear that if I'm not at my computer, I'm not earning my paycheck. And I had this conversation with Kevin Tent recently, who's now the newly anointed president of ACE. And he talked about how he gets his best ideas in the shower or going for a run or riding his bike, right? And he even talks about, oh my God, he takes naps. Like the horror, how dare you, right? But ultimately, we're paid to generate ideas. We're not paid to punch a clock. We're paid to generate ideas and solve problems. And I find the less I'm in front of my computer, the better I am at solving problems. But when I'm at the computer, I am just getting through that stuff as quickly and effectively as possible.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I've thought this, and, now I'm going to put myself in a pickle because it'll make it hard for me to say no to certain things. But the idea of a sabbatical is really something I want to do. I don't know if financially I'm prepared to do that right now, because we have certain goals, my husband and I, for this year. But it is something that I think I need to make more important, because the thing that it's funny when you do these interviews, like sometimes they ask you, so, what shows are you watching? I'm like, who has time to watch other shows? I'm watching this show that I'm working on right now. Like, I watch it like 12 hours a day. The last thing I want to do is like watch another show that's like, that's like mine. I mean, we talked about this. We want to cleanse the palate a little bit, but like, I mean, there used to be times where I'd come home and I wouldn't turn on TV at all. It might be sports. That's the other thing I like to watch is tennis or something like that. Yeah, I just, I feel like I've sort of lost the things that maybe were there in the beginning in terms of, like I used to watch like directors' stuff. Like I would, watch Sidney Lumet's movies in order of when he made them or something like that. And I just haven't done that really since film school. So I wish I could do that. I wish I could read a book every 3 days. I'm so jealous of my mother. I keep buying my mother books, and she's 80. She turned 80 in September. She gets through these books like every other day. She's like, all right, I need another book. I'm like, damn, I got to get you another one. But it's like, I'm kind of jealous of that. And I know that doing something like that, would give me a break from the screen. It'd probably be better for my neck. Right now, I don't know if you notice, I'm like doing this a lot because like it's super tight, but I could do something else with my body and my mind, and I could be like kind of filling it up. I think it's more like filling it up with other influences so that when I go back into the trenches, that is, what we do. There's other ideas, and they're not informed by TV. And maybe I love watching movies. So I want to, I think recently I bought one of those tickets to the Sundance Film Festival. And I loved watching that because there's all these different kinds of films that you're not seeing on Netflix or Amazon or whatever. So it's just sort of different ideas of how people do things. And I want to kind of have that joy again.
All right. Now we're really digging in. Well, we've identified, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the reason you feel empty at the end of a project is because you're sitting at the computer for too long of hours and you're not taking care of yourself and you never exercise. It seems to me that you have the lifestyle habits of a healthy editor pretty wired. It seems to me that you've just been doing it so consistently for so long that there are a lot of other parts of you that are not being nourished because you're so busy working on the next show. So let me posit a question, talking about this idea of very specific goals. Let me posit this question that you can ask that might help. What if when the next opportunity comes, let's hypothetically assume that you've just begun your next hiatus. You're like 2 weeks into it at the most. You're still it's what Walter Murch and I called the hiatus flu, where it's like you're seasick like the first week or two. You're like, what is real life like again? Like, ooh, the sun.
Yeah.
Like, we all kind of go through that period of massive decompression. Really just feels like the flu. So let's assume you're just getting over that and you see all this possibility and bam, the phone rings. And it's another amazing opportunity and you're worried about missing out. There's this FOMO. What if we flip the script? And instead of saying no to the job, you're saying yes to the book reading and catching up on all of the movies and all of the relationships that you're going to rekindle. If you reframe it that way, could you create a goal towards, I'm going to make this sabbatical rock solid. This is going to be surrounded by concrete walls on my calendar, knowing all of the things I get to say yes to at the expense of, quote unquote, another credit or another job.
Right. You know, it's like, I know I need to do this. And yet there's this thing that's like, I've already told this person, I've already met with this person.
But have you committed, signed the dotted line and said, yes, I'm absolutely showing up?
Absolutely not. I have not. I don't even have offers. Well, actually I am. I have signed the dotted line on the immediate thing, but the immediate thing is only really is a 2-monther. So it's not a lot, because that's what I've been doing since Queen's Gambit. I've just been signing on to these little things that are short commitments because I am not ready to commit. So literally since the Queen's Gambit has ended, I have not been able to commit to like a long project at all. It's not what I want to do. But there is this idea, because I even know that Scott wants to do something else next year, this time, April. You know, even saying, okay, I'll do this thing that I've already signed on the dotted line. And even if I do that, and then I don't do anything after that, because I still don't have anything lined up after that. So there's still this opportunity. Like I'm basically giving myself this opportunity to do the thing I actually want to do, but it's like, I'm not ready to jump in the water yet.
And that's fine. You don't need to be ready, but are you getting a little bit more clarity around this idea that I think in my gut already knows the answer, because my gut does not want to commit to anything more than 2 months. My gut knows I really need to take a longer break. And it sounds to me, and it seems like it'd be pretty nuts to say no to Scott Frank right now.
Right, sure.
Given everything that's going on, given what just happened with the Queen's Gambit and where he's going next, I wouldn't advise you to say no. I prefer to stay home and read books for the next 9 months. Right, probably not the best career choice. But if you know that's already there and you know that's going to happen and there's a date associated with it, is there a world where you can just rearrange some of your plans, whether it's financially or otherwise, to put yourself in the position where this is the time that you get that true sabbatical?
It's possible. I'll have to think about that.
All right, I'm going to throw in one more question, and then we're going to wrap it up, because this has gone massively longer than we thought it would.
Sorry.
But no, don't apologize at all. You're kidding. I'm having so much fun. I could go for another hour. I love this. But I'm going to ask one more question. It's an exercise that I run people through. It's a mental exercise.
Okay.
I want you to imagine that you get to jump in a time machine and you get to meet with yourself on morning one of this next show. So I think you said it was April of next year that you would start this next show with Scott?
Yeah.
And I'm assuming it's going to be a similar situation where it's episodic, bunch of episodes. You're the person.
Actually, we don't know.
Oh, you don't know for sure, but it's going to be probably another one of these totally immersive big projects.
Something.
Right? Sure. And I know you probably can't give anything away. I wouldn't expect you to, but just in general, we're going to assume at the very least it's another Queen's Gambit, potentially even bigger in scope and more responsibility. Potentially. Who do you want Michelle to be the first morning she sits in the chair? Because you specifically said, I don't even feel like I was recovered when I started the Queen's Gambit. Is that a pattern you want to repeat? Or do you want to show up to this next show on day one saying, oh my God, am I ready to cut again? I am so refreshed and rejuvenated, and I just ingested all this new knowledge from these films and these books and all these experiences that I've had during this sabbatical. I'm going to kick the crap out of this versus, oh God, why did I just take that job? I'm exhausted. I've had like 2 weeks off, and now I got to do this again for another year. Like, which Michelle do you want to be on morning one?
Michelle A.
Knowing that that's what you could be missing out on. Is that fear greater than the fear of filling the gap?
This is true. Yeah, that is probably what I need. You know, it's hard. I mean, I know it's easy, and if it were just me, maybe it would be different. But well, maybe it can be talked about with the spouse.
I don't know any of the circumstances in your life. I can't see your bank accounts. I'm going to make no judgments about whether or not you should be or you have to be doing this. But I think there's a part of your gut that's saying this might be the time. And maybe I at least need to have a few discussions and do some problem solving, as you do as a storyteller, to see maybe this is the time to make it happen. Because it certainly doesn't sound like it's going to happen next year.
That is true. That's true.
So we don't call it the hot seat for nothing.
Oh, Zach, I feel like I've gotten one of those, energy sessions. I forgot what they call it. It's like Reiki. Where they really get into you and you're like screaming or something. But it's true. It's just one of these things that, deep inside, that's what I think about. And a lot of people think about these things. Because at some point, if you don't choose to do something about it, it will do it for you.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. At some point, you're going to have a sabbatical. The question is it going to be on your terms?
Right. Exactly.
So on that lighthearted note, I would just like to tell you what an immense pleasure this evening has been for me. I'm going to be brutally honest. I hate doing podcasts at night. Nights are that's my time. I recover. Like I started my morning at 7:00 this morning, full day of editing. And then I'm like, oh God, I got to get on the microphone with somebody. My God, this was so much fun. I'm so glad that we were able to make this happen. I have so much respect for the work that you do, how you do it, all of the information and knowledge and inspiration that you're putting out into the world and all the podcasts and the articles and everything else that you're doing. And I really appreciate how brutally honest you were willing to be in our conversation tonight. So I can't thank you enough.
I mean, thank you for making it an experience for me instead of this thing of, okay, what am I going to say about the show? What am I going to say about this or that? But, this is very important. I mean, I feel like I've had a real conversation about like real things, Well,
good. Well, I'm glad that you feel that way. And that was what I promised in the beginning. And I'm glad that I was able to deliver that. My hope is that by the end of a podcast interview, if I don't know somebody personally, I feel like we could be friends by the time we're done talking. I certainly feel that way tonight. So
yes.
This stupid pandemic is over and we can actually see each other in person at some event again. It will be a pleasure to actually meet like real human beings.
Oh, yes. I think definitely. And I'm sure, we'll keep in touch. I mean, you have my email.
I do indeed. So before we go, one last thing for anybody that's been listening to this, and I'm going to assume it's going to be a lot of people, they're going to say, man, Michelle really inspired me. I want to learn more about her. I want to follow her. Maybe I want to connect with her. What's the best way for people to find you? Is it social media? Is it email? Is it LinkedIn? Like, where can people connect with you the best way possible?
I think I am on the Twitters and I am on Instagram. So they can reach me there or email, actually. Yeah.
So are you okay with us then providing your email address to anybody that reaches out and asks for it?
Sure. That's fine.
Excellent. I promise it's not going to be hordes and hordes and tons of people.
I'm sure it won't.
Because most of them are saying, oh my God, there's no way I'm going to bother her. Could never ask. I'm too scared. But there are a few that are courageous enough that may reach out. So I want to make sure that it's okay to do so.
Yeah, that's okay.
Excellent. So on that note, I want to thank you again so much for being here. This has been a tremendous pleasure, and I cannot wait to share this interview and this conversation with the world.
Great. Thank you, Zach. Thank you so much.
Before closing up today's show, I would love to ask for just a couple additional minutes of your time and attention to introduce you to one of my new favorite products created by my good friend Kit Perkins, who you may recognize as creator of the Topomat. Here is a brief excerpt from a recent interview that I did with Ergo-Driven co-founder and CEO Kit Perkins, talking about his latest product, New Standard Whole Protein.
I'm into health and fitness generally, but I want it to be simple and straightforward. About a year and a half ago, I started adding collagen into my protein shakes. And man, the benefits were like more dramatic than any supplement I've ever seen. So I thought, if I could just get this down to coming out of one jar and it's ingredients that I know I can trust, and you just put it in water and you don't have to think about it.
When people think of protein powders, they think, well, I don't want to get big and bulky. And that's not what this is about. To me, this is about repair.
So a big part of what we're talking about here is you are what you eat. Your body's constantly constantly repairing and rebuilding. And the only stuff it can use to repair and rebuild is what you've been eating. Unfortunately, as the years have gone by, every day getting out of bed, it's like, 2 or 3 creaks and pops in the first couple steps. And that I thought you just sort of lived with now. But yeah, once starting the collagen daily or near daily, it's just gone. So for us, job 1A here was make sure it's high quality, and that's grass-fed, 100% pasture-raised cows. And then the second thing, if you're actually going to do it every day, it needs to be simple. It needs to taste good.
Well, my goal is that for anybody that is a creative professional like myself that's stuck in front of a computer, number one, they're doing it standing on a topo mat. Number two, they've got a glass of New Standard protein next to them so they can just fuel their body, fuel their brain. So you and I, my friend, one edit station at a time are going to change the world.
And even better for your listeners, with code OPTIMIZE on either a one-time purchase or that first subscribe and save order, 50% off. So if you do that subscribe and save, that's 20% off and 50% off with code OPTIMIZE. That's a fantastic deal.
If you're looking for a simple and affordable way to stay energetic, focused, and alleviate the chronic aches and pains that come from living at your computer, I recommend New Standard Whole Protein because it's sourced from high-quality ingredients that I trust and it tastes great. To place your first order, visit optimizeyourself.me/newstandard and use the code OPTIMIZE for 50% off your first order. Thank you for listening to part 2 of my interview with Michelle Tesoro. To access the show notes for this and all previous episodes, as well as to subscribe so you don't miss future interviews just like this one, please visit optimizeyourself.me/podcast. And as a quick reminder, if you would like 50 plus pages of my best strategies to optimize your creativity and fit in even just a little bit more life into your work-life balance, you can download my ultimate guide to optimizing your creativity 100% free at optimizeyourself.me/ultimate guide. And a special thanks to our sponsors Evercast and ErgoDriven for making today's interview possible. To learn more about how to collaborate remotely without missing a frame and to get your real-time demo of Evercast in action, visit optimizeyourself.me/Evercast. And to learn more about ErgoDriven and my favorite product for standing workstations, the Topo Mat, visit optimizeyourself.me/Topo. That's TOPO. And to learn more about ErgoDriven and their brand new product that I am super excited about, New Standard Whole Protein, visit optimizeyourself.me/newstandard. Thank you for listening. Stay safe, healthy, and sane, and be well.